Development, the children's father lawyers up, refuses to talk about the case as a judge strips custody from the grandparents, even though cops say daddy is a person of interest in mommy's disappearance.
Someone out there has to know something. Someone out there must have seen something.
Missing mother of three.
Police have searched canals and lakes. Have anything to do with her disappearance?
Nothing at all.
At this time, the father is a person of interest.
His estranged wife, Vilet, went missing. Relatives say Sid Torrez threatened suicide.
I'm going to get a gun and end it all.
Ever since they got married, please, okay? It's been a rocky relationship.
Family says they are outraged. The state of Florida is agreeing to let Sid have custody of the couple's 3 children.
Well, I think it's appalling. I think it's horrible.
Investigators took away bricks with strange markings on them, and they saw faint stains or smears on the front door. Police also searched Sid Torres's Jaguar.
She would never leave those children. Believe me, those children were her life.
Good evening. I'm Pat Alama in for Nancy Grace. Thank you for joining us tonight. We go straight to Florida in the search for a mother of 3 vanishing without a trace. A stunning development related to custody of the 3 children left behind without their mommy. To Deborah Roberts, news anchor, Florida News Network. Illustrate this case for us. When did it all begin? When did she first go missing? Who was she with? What were the last signs of her? Any evidence that we know from those 3 days before the husband called?
Well, Vilet was last seen on March 30th. She had dropped her children off to stay the weekend with her husband, her estranged husband, Sid, and had gone out to dinner that evening with a friend. And that friend and coworker was the last person who had seen her. And after that, she disappeared. Sid, her estranged husband, had listed her as missing 3 days after her disappearance, alleging that maybe she had even run off with another man, something her family vehemently denies. And since then, there's been no sign of Vilet. Police did see some items from both of their vehicles and their home, but have not been able to find enough to tie anyone conclusively to her disappearance or where she might be.
All right, so let me get this straight. So Sid was staying at her townhome at the time of this disappearance, but he doesn't normally stay at the townhome.
Yes, they had separated about 3 months before her disappearance, and he was staying with friends further south in Miami-Dade County. And at that time, though, at that weekend she had disappeared, he was staying overnight at the same home that he had once shared with Vilet, the same weekend that she ended up disappearing.
Detective Steve Toyota, Miramar Police Department, update us on the investigation. It's been a long road for you. The searches, the investigation, the seizure of items from the home. Can you advance that case for us any more today than yesterday?
We're actively still looking for Vilet. As investigators, you know, we're still hoping for the best, but we have to prepare for the worst. We're still looking for her.
To Detective Steve Toyota from the Miramar Police Department, evidence. I know you seized items from the townhome and the 2 cars. What can you tell us about what you've seized?
You know, we seized anything that we thought could be relevant to the investigation and her disappearance, but I can't get into details of what we seized.
Is there any kind of physical evidence that you can tell us about? And if you can't tell us about physical evidence, can you tell us that some exists?
Some of that evidence may still be yet to be determined. We're still trying to put the pieces together, and we seize things that we think will be pertinent to the investigation, and sometimes we just have to see how it plays out.
But let me ask you, Detective Toyota, is your attention to any other people, whether you can name them or not, this is still a mystery. Where else are you looking? Do you have any other clues, any tips from people who are concerned about this?
Well, I can tell you that everybody's still a suspect. We haven't eliminated anybody as a suspect in this. And Sid Torrez remains a person of interest in this investigation. But, no, we are looking at all possibilities.
A stunning development related to custody of the 3 children left behind without their mommy. Let's go to John DePietro, host with WPRO Radio. John, what happened with the custody matter?
Well, it's a matter now that the father does have custody, that he has not been charged with any crime. And so although the children have been with their missing mother's parents, a judge ruling that the father will have now custody of these 3 children.
Deborah Roberts, news anchor, Florida News Network. It's been a battle between grandparents and dad. How did it begin, and now how has it all ended?
Well, apparently it began because of an anonymous phone call that casts a cloud of suspicion over Sid Torrez, that he would harm himself and or the children. That led the Department of Children and Families to place the children in the maternal grandparents' care while the mother continues to be missing.
He is still a person of interest and only a person of interest. Najiba Blanco, sister of Vilet Torrez, we're privileged to have you with us during this incredibly horrific time for you. Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us about the children? What is their understanding of what's happened to Mommy?
I don't think they're aware that that something bad could have happened to her. They know she's missing, and they think she'll be back. They think she's okay, and she'll be back with them.
Javier Blanco, brother of the missing mom, Vilet. Javier, I know you're probably distraught over the custody issue, but the courts ruled and Children's Services ruled fair and square, apparently, but you must be outraged.
See a lot of writing.
Absolutely, Pat. Thanks for having me. I think this is an absolute travesty. Unfortunately, that's actually the law here in Florida. Apparently, even if somebody's charged and actually arrested, if they bond out, they still have some sort of rights with kids. And that, to me, is just appalling. There should be some sort of safety system in the law, whereas if you're still considered a person of interest in the homicide investigation of your wife, you should not have access to your kids. They should give an incentive to that person to clear their name. Instead, he refuses to say anything, to talk to anybody, to the media, to detectives, and it's appalling.
Richard De La Fera, you are the attorney for Sid Torrez. Are these children in any danger in his hands?
Good evening, Pat. Absolutely not. I can tell you that the Department of Children and Family Services observed a supervised visitation with Sid during the 2-month period that he was in the custody, or the kids were in the custody of their grandmother, and the Department of Children and Family Services observed a very loving, affectionate, positive relationship.
I want to ask Kirby Clements, defense attorney, you know, this is a really, really prickly issue because we're talking about a man who is only a person of interest, yet there are all kinds of allegations swirling about his character and behavior. And Javier brings up the point that, hey, as long as you are a person of interest, then you shouldn't be able to have children. Is that just blatantly unfair and a violation of someone's rights in your mind?
Well, it's absolutely unfair, and it's a complete violation of the individual's rights and the rights of the children. I mean, if you think about it, the last person that this woman had dinner with is also a suspect. I mean, will we take that person's children away? I mean, you have to really look at it. If you have committed a crime against that child, then it's appropriate to say that you can't have custody of that child. But if you're just merely a suspect in a disappearance that is unsolved, absolutely no way they should take your children away. Not at all.
But Alex Sanchez, also defense attorney, you know, if there is a history of mental instability, if threats and allegations that have been rumored to have happened are true, then doesn't the government end up with blood on its hands? I mean, I know the elephant in the room is everyone's thinking about the Susan and Josh Powell case. You know, what if something happens? Then what?
You know, look, if the government was notified in advance that this guy was a dangerous character and they still allowed him to have custody of the children and they got hurt, you know, they could be held liable. But right now, if the police have information that somehow he's involved in the disappearance of his wife, let them go to family court. Let them join forces with the family to make an application to have those children removed. But you would have to come in and make statements and affirmations in court that you have certain information. Provide that to the court, and then make the court make a decision in this matter.
Ramani Durvastula, clinical psychologist, thanks for joining us. I can't stop thinking about what's going through these little ones' minds. Just try to paint a picture for us of children torn by their mother missing, and she is missing at this point. Their father is only a person of interest, yet they're being carted back and forth between grandparents and parents. My heavens, what must be happening to them psychologically?
It's terror and it's chaos. For any child to not have a mom is frightening. It's been months, they don't know where she is, and it's been an unstable situation for them. Kids go to a really dark fantasy place. They often blame themselves. They wonder what they've had to do with it. They wonder if she's coming back. And these kids are at a wide age range, so they need to be sort of talked with in a different way. But this is a time of terror, and it makes the world seem like a really scary place, especially when they don't have a stable place to live. So all of this is combining to, somebody really needs to talk with these kids.
Pat Brown, criminal profiler and author of Only the Truth. I know you've probably dealt with many children in the course of your career. You know, what do you do in this situation from a law enforcement standpoint? I mean, maybe you could glean information from them, but it's a delicate balance, is it not?
Yeah, it is, because, and this is the problem with where the children are at, because if they're with the father, he can influence them. If they're with the parents of the mother, they can influence those children. And I agree with the lawyer that says you just can't take away somebody's rights because they're a person of interest. What if you were totally innocent? You want to be with your children, and maybe your in-laws don't like you for whatever reasons. Do you want your children over there with them and having them poison them? So, you know, on the other hand, he is a person of interest, and you know, in most of these cases we found that there's usually a good reason for that. It's scary for the parents of the grandparents of the children, because the Josh Powell thing, they don't want those children to go into a dangerous situation. So I think everybody's kind of caught up in a really bad place, and it's very hard legally to do much about it, except for, I want to point this out, the behaviors. The fact that the social worker saw him talking nice to the kids in supervised visits is ludicrous. Psychopaths can do that all the time. What we need to see is, what is his history? If his history has violence in it, there's a reason to take the children away. If there isn't any violence that can be proven, that's a problem, and you can't say there's a dangerous situation necessarily.
Najiba Blanco, again, back to you, the sister of Vilet. Are you nervous for the children being in Sid's custody?
Yes. Yes, I am, because I know this person. I know this person for 20 years. I know what my sister lived married to him. I know how controlling he can get. I know how he can go from being very nice and sweet in front of people, like his lawyer's talking about, to changing in front of others, to being different when he's behind his closed doors. I don't know what he can do to them. I know what he used to do to my sister. What he can do to them, I don't know. And my sister's not there anymore to protect them. And we lost my sister. We want to protect them now. We can't do anything for my sister. We want to protect them. I am worried of what he can do.
Sid Torrez is being investigated in connection with his wife Vilet's disappearance.
Ever since they got married, please, okay? It's been a rocky relationship.
Police also searched Sid Torrez's Jaguar.
Vilet Torrez's family asks anyone in their path if they've seen their missing mother of three.
Police have searched canals and lakes, but have not found her body.
Supposedly toxic marriage.
Police believe foul play was involved.
I'm hoping, I'm praying to God that she's alive.
Missing mother of three.
Police believe foul play was involved.
Vilet would never leave her children.
Sid Torrez is a person of interest in his wife Vilet's disappearance.
Vilet and her husband Sid were estranged.
Investigators took away bricks with strange markings on them.
I heard exactly that.
What? The state investigated and agreed the children should be with their dad.
I'm gonna get a gun and end it all.
Maybe even possibly hurt the kids.
I do feel that it was a viable threat.
I'm Pat Alama in for Nancy Grace. John DePietro, back to you. Give us a timeline. Let's set the stage for what happened 2 months ago so that our viewers understand everything before we go back to some of these pressing issues.
Well, apparently on March 30th was when she was reported missing. Her husband saying that essentially been gone for 3 days, and since then it is just a total mystery, with her friends and family saying she was a devoted mother, she wouldn't just leave on her own, and it is just a complete mystery, Pat, as to how she disappeared and where is she 2 months later.
Detective Steve Toyota, Miramar Police Department. You know, I'm wondering about what she may have left behind, her phone, her purse. What was left behind? Have you been able to notice any kind of credit card activity, phone call activity, text activity?
That I really can't get into, Pat. But those things have been observed or are being investigated.
Javier Blanco, a brother of Vilet. You know, I'm trying to figure out, you know, where this is all leading. Did she have a single enemy? Was there maybe a jealous other person in her life? Anyone you can think of, a coworker, anyone who might be part of this equation?
Absolutely not, Pat. My sister was a loving person. Everybody that knew her always saw her smiling. She was always very caring towards everybody. Everybody at work misses her. They actually feel, that she was one of the best people they've ever met. There's been plenty of comments on Facebook that speak to that. Nobody that I know as far as a lover, because actually Sid was her only boyfriend in high school, the only boyfriend I ever knew, and actually ended up marrying him. It's unfortunate that she was committed to this guy all the way until the very end, even though he's made several threats, had already choked her before, had several affairs. It's unfortunate.
Dr. Bill Lloyd, board-certified surgeon and pathologist, after 2 months, the well runs dry, the road dries up. It gets harder and harder to solve these cases, does it not?
It sure does. Let's break it down. From the moment she disappeared, something else was happening to her. Did she run away by herself? It seems like that's not a typical pattern for her. Something that we haven't talked about is a murder for hire or abduction for hire scenario. This is why it's important to consider this. When the police do their investigation, they're just going to find friendly DNA around all the cars and all the residences. Also, a murder for hire allows the spouse to distance themselves from the event, making them seem innocent. Pat, this is all about control. 20 years of control.
Missing mother of 3.
Police are investigating this case as a murder.
I'm counting the hours, I'm counting the minutes, and I'm hoping she comes back.
Investigators gathered evidence outside the home he once shared with his wife.
This is a person of interest in a homicide investigation involving your wife.
Police have searched canals and lakes, but have not found her body.
Pat Alama in for Nancy Grace. Back to Richard De La Fera, attorney for Sid Torrez. I'm just wondering, did Sid have an enemy? Did Sid had someone who might have ever threatened to go after his wife for any reason?
Well, not that I'm aware of, Pat, but I do want to comment on some of the things that are being said about the relationship, about control and violence, and I don't know if my earlier comments made it on the air, but I did request all reports from the Department of Children and Family Services and the Attorney General's office that might relate to the petition to remove the children. And I received no reports. Repeated requests resulted in no reports of any kind of violence or control or any of the kinds of things that are being said. So I think the record needs to be clear on that.
Nijiva Blanco, sister of Vilet, you said something earlier that was quite haunting. You speak about your sister as if you think she has passed. And do you believe that to be the truth?
Honestly, I don't want to believe that, but it's been 2 months, and I know my sister, if she was alive, she would try to contact us in any way. She wouldn't just ignore her children. She wouldn't just disappear just like that. My sister is a very, very responsible person. In fact, I think she was the most responsible of all of us. I believe that something really bad must have happened to her for her not to communicate at all with us.
Children, believe me, those children were her life.
At this time, the father is a person of interest.
His estranged wife, Vilet, went missing.
Miramar police are confirming that Sid Torrez is a person of interest.
He's been absent in her search.
Have anything to do with her disappearance?
Nothing at all.
Investigators gathered evidence.
Police have searched canals and lakes, but have not found her body.
Someone out there has to know something.
Torrez gave a DNA sample, hair samples, and fingerprints to Miramar police.
I'm hoping she comes back.
A devastating mystery out of South Florida. 2 months, a woman vanishes without a trace. Not just a woman, a mother of 3 beautiful children, and her name is Vilet Torrez, and we still don't have answers. And the only thing left to do is to keep searching. Detective Steve Toyota, again, Miramar Police Department. What are you doing now? The thing about Florida that a lot of people may not know are they're just little pockets of waterways everywhere in South Florida. That's a daunting task. How are you handling that in your search for Vilet?
Methodically, we're utilizing any assistance we can obtain. We've used cadaver dogs and and other agencies to help us out. But you're right, there are a lot of waterways in South Florida, and there's many locations to search.
You know, something I really wasn't aware of is the ability of cadaver dogs to deal with bodies that may be submerged in water. How does that work?
A body submerged in water will still give off a scent that the dog can detect, and they will alert to that.
And how massive does the search remain? I mean, at some point, you've got to be really careful about the use of your resources. Other people need help. Other cases need to be solved. So how extensive is it right now?
It is still pretty extensive. We still have a lot of detectives working on this, and the investigation kind of flows. It all depends on what information we're working off at the time, but we still have devoted detectives working towards finding Vilet Torrez.
And one of the things you said earlier, you said no one's been ruled out, and you mentioned, and maybe I misunderstood, you mentioned other people. Are you definitively looking at other people in this case that you find of interest as well?
Maybe it wasn't clear. We haven't ruled anybody out. We're not being closed-minded to any possibility. So I could tell you that Sid Torrez remains a person of interest, and nobody's been eliminated as a possible suspect.
Pat Brown, where do you go after 2 months? You still have a person of interest. You still have a missing mother. What next?
You know, this is where it gets so difficult, because finding, if we assume that she's dead at this point, if that's what's happened to her, finding her body is going to be very difficult. If this is a person known to her, he's going to work overtime to make sure that body isn't found, unlike a serial killer who might just not care and just toss her in the woods and then she pops up one day. So it's very difficult, and we've seen so many of these cases go on for years like this. All we can hope is that somehow, some way, some real physical evidence, her body, or she who shows up, or some physical evidence at home will lead to the closure in this case.
Ramani Dravastula, doctor, clinical psychologist. You know, are there any psychological clues we can look for here? Signs that she may have delivered before just disappearing? It just seemed to just vanish. What can we look for from a psychological level that might help us solve this?
I mean, I think that one of the big concerns here is how there was a lot of distress in her relationship, and where that was taking her to. Now, no one in her circle is seeming to say that she was super distressed. Like, if a person is really becoming agitated, if a person's using drugs or alcohol, they may sometimes get to that place where they'll sort of run away and escape. There were none of those signs there, and while there was distress in that relationship, it didn't seem so much that she would flee and leave her children. So one of the signs, though, I'd really look at is how that relationship problem with her partner could have led to this disappearance, whether due to foul play or something else, because that seems to be the core of the main problems in this woman's life right now. Otherwise, you would look to see if they were having conversations with people saying, I want to get out, I don't want to do this anymore, really looking at the conversation she was having with friends and family to see if any of that would give them clues, and look at her past record of behavior. Has she done this before? That would tell us volumes. It doesn't sound like she has ever done anything like this before.
John DePietro, host of WPRO Radio. Is the community involved in trying to solve this mystery? Well, I'm looking at flyers right now, so yes would be the answer, correct?
Absolutely, Pat. I mean, there's no question, tremendous support in the community to try to locate her. And again, I think one of the biggest things here is this is someone who is seen as a devoted mother who wouldn't just run off and leave her children. And that's what's so puzzling about her disappearance, and why I think the community has come forward and worked so hard to try to find some clues to her disappearance.
And Javier Blanco, brother of Vilet, she was quite an interesting, bright, accomplished woman, was she not?
Yes, of course. She,
or is, I should say.
Unfortunately, I think is was because based on all the different testimony and all the different people coming forward, it seems that the only person to point a finger at here, and who I think is actually guilty of this, is Sid. So I think, unfortunately, it was. But she was very accomplished. She graduated cum laude from the University of Miami. She learned to speak English at the age of 15. spoke it perfectly. She was getting ready to build a corporation. She was actually getting ready to move on with her life. She changed life insurance policies last year. In fact, I just heard, that Sid tried to take out a life insurance policy on her 2 weeks before. I mean, if all these things don't really ring a bell and sort of start setting off alarms, I don't know what will. And really, I think Mr. Dell'Fera should really, look to the mirror and look really hard, because I'm sure he won't let his daughter date Sid, and I'm sure he won't feel comfortable having Sid look after his grandkids. It's really.
Are going to do their job, and they're going to conduct their investigation, and we should see where that investigation leads. Instead of jumping to conclusions and pointing fingers, we should let law enforcement do its job.
Javier Blanco, response to Mr. Dell'Fera.
Well, we all know the family court system here in Florida is a mess. We had 3 different hearings, and we had 3 different attorneys on this case. So the fact that the system is perfect, that assumption, I think should be thrown out the window, right now. Mr. Dell'Fera is not a family law attorney. So there were other reports that said that he was hired just to be the family attorney for Sid, and that I think is bogus. Why all these charades, all these different smoke and mirrors? I don't really understand. Not only coming from him, but also from Sid. The fact that he's not talking to anybody, the fact that he had an interview and he didn't say a word. I mean, if you're hiding something, then you probably did something wrong. If you're a person of interest, there's a reason for that. If everybody's still being looked at, why isn't everybody a person of interest?
Connection with his wife Vilet's disappearance.
Ever since they got married, please, okay? It's been a rocky relationship.
Police also searched Sid Torrez's Jaguar.
Vilet Torrez's family asks anyone in their path if they've seen their missing mother of 3.
Police have searched canals and lakes, but have not found her body. Police believe foul play was involved.
Defense attorneys, Kirby Clements, Alex Sanchez, we don't want to rake a person of interest over the coals. Do you feel that's what's happening? Do you feel that there's enough being done to look at other potential suspects in this case? Alex, you first.
It doesn't appear that they're looking at other people. It looks like they're looking at the husband in this case. By the way, I just want to refer to one thing. The family, I know, desperately wants the children taken out and brought with the grandparents. But, the police probably want those kids to remain in the house of the father. Their ears and eyes. They may come across some information. They may receive a telephone call or a letter in the mail. They may overhear the father say something. The best place for those kids to be, from a police point of view, is inside that house.
Kirby?
Well, I think they are raking the father over the coals. I would point this out. I mean, if he was staying in that house and ordinarily he wasn't there, was she dating someone else that may have become jealous as a result of that? What about this coworker? Was it a male coworker, a female coworker? When did he last see her? I mean, there's so many questions about that person and those scenarios that have not been answered that it seems that it's being a bit unfair to target the father at this point.
And you know what, back to Najiba Blanco, the sister of Vilet, I'm just wondering, if she was making a new life for herself and, getting rid of what was seemingly a toxic relationship, did she date someone new? Did she tell you about a new friend? Not necessarily something romantic, but someone that she found interesting, because you never know what kind of creeps are out there and what they're capable of.
No, actually, my sister always wanted to keep her marriage. We come from a broken family. Our parents are divorced. Separated, and she always told me how her biggest dream was to stay married forever till death do us part, and she did everything possible to try to keep her marriage. She went through a lot, and like I said, abuse from Sid Torrez, and she looked for help in her church. She looked for help through her friends and through us too, to say that there wasn't any abuse just because he was supervised during the visitations with his children. It's just completely absurd to me. I know this person for 20 years. I know my sister. She came to us. She told us everything she was going through. Christmas, she was alone at home with us and her children. He wasn't anywhere to be seen, and he was here in Florida, in Miami. New Year's, alone again with us. He wasn't anywhere to be found either. all those months after that, also alone, she started telling my mom how she was tired of all of it, how she had given everything she got for all these years, and still nothing. He didn't change. She thought he was bipolar. She told us maybe he could get some type of treatment and things will work because I want to save my marriage. But at the end, she decided, this is over. I'm tired. I'm going to move on. I'm looking for advice in divorce, and I already told Sid that I'm going to divorce him in this 2 weeks or a week before she disappeared.
And Richard De La Fera, very quickly, though, you have claimed that they were trying to repair the marriage. Do you believe that?
I do. About a week or more before the disappearance, Sid had gone to a divorce lawyer to get papers drawn up for a divorce. And Vilet told him, no, let's hold off. Let's try to work this out. So I think that the characterization that Vilet wanted out of the marriage and Sid didn't want her out of the marriage, I think that that's belied by the fact that Sid went to a divorce attorney himself.
To tonight's CNN Heroes.
Hopefully there'll be an arrest, and hopefully we'll get the kids back in our custody. But we got to keep in mind also. I want to touch back on a couple of things. He was a truck driver before, and so he knows desolate roads. He knows the roads less traveled per se, and he also does work now for a dry ice cleaning company that cleans everything, including what I believe is blood from supermarket meats. So the fact that he took 3 days to report her missing, and the fact that he refuses to talk, and all he's doing is hiding behind his attorney, it sucks that this is the system here in Florida.
Investigated and agreed the children should be with their dad.
I think it's appalling. I think it's horrible.
Have anything to do with her disappearance?
Nothing at all.
Police have searched canals and lakes, but have not found her body.
Why would anybody try to do that to her, try to do something bad to her?
Police believe foul play was involved.
What a horrible mystery. This wonderful mother of 3 children, Vilet Torrez, just vanished into thin air, seemingly. Still no clues, still no answers. John DePietro, what's next? What's next? What are you hearing from police and investigators in your area?
Right now, Pat, it's really just a matter of trying to get a break in the case, and also trying to see if maybe the more attention on the case, maybe someone has some piece of information that they don't realize it could be valuable. Everyone is obviously concerned about now the 3 children going to be in the custody and with their father. But this is one of those things where someone just almost mysteriously completely vanishes, but we all know there has to be some reasonable explanation on what happened to her.
I want to take a phone call very quickly, if I can. Diane in Florida, your question.
Hi, Pat. First, I want to say my heart and prayers go out to the family. And why did the husband wait 3 days to report his wife missing?
Deborah Roberts, would you like to answer that quickly?
I have, there is no reason why. He had said, allegedly, that she may have run off with another man, something her family has vehemently denied, and that didn't see any reason to contact authorities because maybe she was just moving on with her life.